Hey everyone, welcome to a Pulse of the Maggots interview. My name is John Garcia, and joining me today from Houston, doom, goth, soul, prog, metal band Oceans of Slumber, and in my opinion, one of the best vocalists in the heavy genre today. Please welcome Cammie Beverly. Cammie, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. It's hot everywhere we go, and we're not anywhere out of the hot weather yet. I'm sure it's the same for you as well.
Yeah, very very hot everywhere.
So I wanted to get into the album. You guys just released your latest album, Starlight and Ash, about a week or so ago, July 22nd through Century Media Records. Very much a change of pace for the band, but still has a lot of the elements that you all have been cultivating and putting out there in music form for basically the entire career of the band. You said that you went and explored a Southern Gothic end of Oceans of Slumber this time. I'm curious on why you thought that that was a side to explore, like what drew you to that, and what the kind of conversations with the band were.
We had been really isolated during COVID, and we had a lot of time to sort of contemplate what the band was going to do next, and if things were still going to work out. And we've always approached each album like it could be our last,
Mm-hmm.
and this one was really no different, especially with the state of like everything going on in the world. And so we kind of just decided to make an album that we wanted to make and not worry about what people expected, or not worry about what had been, or what it was gonna how it was gonna be received. It was just what we needed to get out and what we really wanted to make. Um, and so that's kind of what happened. We are truly Southern people. Like we definitely have a pride in where we're from, but there's so many elements to take from. It's blues and country and folk and jazz, and just there's something unique about being so close to the coast in a place like that. And so we just kind of drew on all of our sort of ancestral influences, so to speak, and really got down in the nitty gritty of like what we felt like where we are from sounds like.
Yeah, and did you find a freedom in being able to do that, just not worry about anything else and just do whatever it is that y'all wanted to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this was our most uninhibited album. Like we truly, had to kind of go off of, if things never come back and things never open and people are just kind of sort of consuming online, or if this just starts to go nowhere and we're making music for ourselves, like what will we make? And that's what came out.
And I think one of the strengths of this record, at least for me personally, is the fact that, kind of like I mentioned at the top, is that a lot of the elements that y'all have had through your music are all there, but if you think of them as sliders, right? Because, like you just mentioned, you dabble in so many different styles of music or genres that are all blended together into what make up Oceans of Slumber. And this one dials some of those back, it pushes some of those forward. Even though, this obviously sonically sounds a little bit different than what y'all have done before, I still think, at least in my opinion, it is very much still a Oceans of Slumber record and does everything that y'all have been representing since, basically since, you joined the band.
I agree. I think that there's always been elements like this to all of our albums. From winter till now, it's not really like anything has changed. It's just like we're doing the same thing, just in a different mode, or like in a different color. Like it's still very much like I said, an Oceans of Slumber sound and an Ocean Silver style that has been debuted on other albums.
Mm-hmm.
From songs like Sunlight and The Banished Heart, you know, Winter. It's like they're not far off from that.
Mm-mm.
And I think that the true essence of our sound is still very much there.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And that kind of leads me to another question that I have, because I've heard you use the term soul metal before in some interviews. I think the first time that I was introduced to the phrase was Manuel from Zealand Ardor, I think has used it as well. Do you think, first of all, how do you feel about that term? And is that something that A, you'd want to be described as, or B, you think that should have more prominence when people talk about this style of metal?
Um, soul metal's okay, but the problem to me is like being a soul singer is not exclusive to a sound as far as like I'm concerned. I
Hmm.
think that singing soulfully is something that a lot of people do in a lot of different genres, and so it doesn't really give a good indication of like what you're getting. And I just wouldn't want to coin that term for exclusively belonging to a certain genre, because being soulful and singing soulfully, like I said, that's like everybody.
Yeah.
And then I'm just walking around looking for shade because my head's too hot and it's dark.
Yeah. I could just
But
just the amount of light coming from your video right now, I can just tell how hot it is right there.
well, I found a good spot. Yeah, I was like, ooh, I can't stay there. But I think, so we've had the term like Southern Gothic use, and I'm all for like genres being described for the experience that you'll get rather than like the sonic sounds you'll be hearing, because then it gives you more of like a broad spectrum of what to expect versus, okay, this is going to have just exactly this and be exactly that, or being too vague, something like progressive metal, and you're like, that says nothing about it.
Yeah.
It says absolutely nothing about what you're about to listen to. And you can have what's like most popular in that subgenre, but it's still, it's like progressive genre is just a catch-all for things that they can't say is like death metal or black metal. And it's like, okay, like it doesn't really leave a lot of room for what we're doing and how we're going to sound. That I feel like, okay, if you call something like a Southern Gothic, now you have imagery in your head, now you have an aesthetic, now you have an idea that's a little bit more concise than even progressive metal would be. But something like soulful metal, it's coining something that I think is just unfair to use for one particular style of singing, because you have things like Alice in Chains and the whole grunge era. I'd say they were incredibly soulful singers, but that wouldn't be soul metal or soul rock, And
Yeah.
so it's like I don't, I get what people are trying to do, but I don't think it quite hits the mark.
I think that's a fantastic answer, and why I wanted to ask you about that, because we as metalheads, we're obsessed about our genres, right? We put everything in a little categorical little box. Nowadays, with streaming services and blending everything together, and people being able to listen to so many things, there are so many bands that just sound like themselves that it's really hard to do that. Which is why we would say like, oh yeah, this goth, prog, death, whatever it is, just all those descriptors, because I mean that is something that can be applied to your band as well. But just one of those things, that I was very curious on that, because I'm one of those people that it's like you could use the descriptors to say what it is, but at this point in time, bands are getting so far into the blurring of genres that even at this point, like, does it really even matter anymore? I don't know. It's conversations I love having.
No, I agree. And it's something that obviously bothers a band like us, because people get upset when their outlet tells them, oh, it's this style. And they get there and like, that's not what I would call this style. But to be so hung up on the genre that it is in the first place, it's like the serpent eating its tail. And now instead of being the tail, we're the head. And it's like, we're supposed to be the pioneers. We're supposed to be a genre that's open and expressive and no boundaries and no holds. And now here we are making the most rules and being the most confined and the most strict, and doing the most gatekeeping. And you're like, we're missing the point of making good music. And Oceans of Slumber is just about making good music, making expressive music, and let the titles fall where they may. And it's like, we can't really help that, but we're going to be damned if we're trying to make music just to fit into a certain genre. It's like, that defeats the point.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it also doesn't leave room for, exploration, developing sound, exploring something different, right? If you're just in one spot and then someone goes to do something, then like I know people get mad about that, but it's like bands can change over time and they explore things and they don't want to do the same thing over and over again. Obviously some bands are fine just doing that same sound over and over again, but yeah, I mean I've had this conversation with so many people as far as like when you put a band into a box and then they stray from that because they want to do something different, all of a sudden people are mad because, oh, you were supposed to be death metal and now you're this. So I
Right.
100% agree with what you're saying.
And then, you know, people we've had a few of those kind of sentiments expressed to us, and it's like, you know, it's like, we're sorry, we're not sorry. We're not removing the albums that people like just because a new one came out. It's like, well, listen to that one. And you know, I don't get the hang up. It'd be one thing if a band put out music and you're like, well, I don't think it's good, and they were trying to do something new, or they were trying to do another album and it's not good and I don't like it, which is subjective in and of itself too, but it's like, okay, it's not good and I don't like it, versus they put out something that's good, just it's not what you expected, but you're mad in the same way. It's like, that I don't get. And it's like, you either like it or you don't, but don't dislike it because it doesn't fit a definition that you have. It's like, that's not the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's that closed-mindedness that you were kind of talking about earlier, that gatekeeping, just like, it's not what I was expecting, so it sucks, which is not how things should go.
No.
So I want to move in and, you know, talk about the album just a little bit as far as the creation process of it. Because for me, Oceans of Slumber have always been a band that it takes me several listens through like a full album to kind of really grasp what's going on. You know, previously there's a lot of, you know, long songs, a lot of stuff going on, like a lot of denseness. And every time you listen to a song, there's more things that you pick out. I found that happened with this album, but in a much different way, because, you know, the songs aren't, you know, musically as dense with riffs and this and everything like that, but there's so much emotion, so much soul, like you were saying before, and so much of a journey that you go on. I'm curious, so as a listener, you know, my relationship with the songs changes over many listens and everything like that as I get more familiar with them. Does that happen for you from a composition standpoint? And if it does, how has your relationship with these songs more from when you composed them to today as we're speaking?
Man, they changed a lot, and it was something that was kind of a new discovery to me when I joined the band and like had a first album come out. And there's what the songs mean to you, there's how they sound to you, and there's always like parts of it that stick with you, or that during the process of like making the songs like do it for you. But then when it comes out and people are like, no, it's this part, or this is that, and or they have a whole new meaning for it, and you're like, wow, they've changed so much, and you're like, they're not just my little baby anymore, you know, they have their own identity in the world. And you know, more so the sentiment behind how the songs feel change. You know, I still hear them the same way, and I can remember like where I was when I was writing to it, or like my inspiration, but it's like the meaning morphs, and it I think, to me, like the testament of a good song is it takes in more relevance and it takes in more responsibility as it ages. And so, you know, we write a song like, let's say like The Banished Heart, and in that moment it was written from whatever experiences we were having and the magnitude of those things. But as it grows and it takes in other people's meaning and other people's magnitude, and it maintains that relevance to speaking to like something to do with the human condition, then I feel like that's what gives a song like that classic, what they say, like that classic thing, to where like it doesn't age, it's timeless. And I feel like on this album, it had that impact so much sooner than some of the other songs. And it was written from really trying to dive into that concept head on, versus like coming back around to it because I was just talking about like a particular heartache or a particular depressing day. It's like I wrote these songs to be bigger than me, and to like apply to a societal ailment on top of a personal ailment. And so, you know, I'm curious to see how their relevance like grows over time, and how much importance it's like the songs suck into them. It's like, I guess, I hope I'm explaining it right.
No,
I
got you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, if I make a quirky song and it's like, it's fun and it's a bop, like in the moment, and it trends, but then it falls off because it doesn't maintain that it's speaking to something that people need for a longer portion of time, I guess, like that. And I feel like that's why sadder, more serious songs can like take the test of time versus like jaunty, you know, we were just drinking to it songs of an era. And so it's like that's how I feel, I guess, about how the songs like change.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, for me, I always think that the mark of a good song is something that can be intensely personal, but also relatable to anyone who listens to it, right? I mean, I was just listening to the album again yesterday and this morning, and as I mentioned, like things pop out at different times, right? And like the song "Just a Day," I imagine is like a very intensely personal song for y'all, but then you listen to it, and so many people can take so many different interpretations of that, or you know, me, this is a good thing or a bad thing or an in-between thing and all that other stuff. And I think that like that is speaks exactly to what you were talking about as far as something intensely personal to you that can be translated to so many different things for so many different people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you get it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like it's like that, and so for me that's how they change. They start off as my personal experience, and then they morph into all of everybody else's personal experience, and that's the magic of it to me.
That's amazing. I love it. It's almost like sending a kid off to college or something like that. You know, like
Yeah,
you have to, you
like,
can't, you don't
no,
have control over it anymore.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, amazing. So I wanted to get in real quick. You guys are gonna go on a tour. Do you remember those things, Cammie? Holy shit! The Lighthouse East tour kicks off in your native Houston on the 27th of August and runs all the way to 9/11 in Austin. What are you most excited about doing this leg and getting out there and playing 2 albums worth of new material? It seems like.
We've done a good mix of like, I think that I think that we've had a good mixture of songs to kind of not disappoint people too much, because exactly, it's a lot that we've missed like not touring. I practiced like going on a tour with Necrofire when they went out with Danzig, because Dauber's like, you get your sea legs under you, and I was like, this is tiring and this band is uncomfortable. So I remember, but I'm just really excited about the impact these songs have on people live and getting to feel the response versus just read about it. Like I definitely love people. Just I know the magic that I feel when I get to see songs that I love live, and to know that I can do that and deliver that for other people. It's like this is what I look forward to the most. You know, just seeing people live again and having the music become an atmosphere around people live. Like that's just I live for that.
Yeah, and I think it's something that we all really, really missed. You know, the past couple years. I remember I was seeing a show a couple months ago, and just that feeling, you know, when there's 4 people on stage, but it doesn't sound like they're making that music. There's just like a magic in the room that happens. Like I got to feel that again, and I was like, I almost started crying because it's like, holy shit! Like I had been to shows since then before, right? But it's just that feeling that you get when it just transcends whatever you're doing is something that can't be replicated, no matter how loud you play the album on your stereo system or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So wrapping up, Cammie, there is no right answer to this last question, but I always ask artists whenever the album comes out, because you never know what kind of answer you're going to get. But as people listen to Starlight and Ash, and as you know they consume it and enjoy it, what do you want them to take away from the album and this project that you put out into the world?
I want it to be sort of like an escape. Like I want this place that I've envisioned in my head, that's kind of the secret story to Starlight Ash, to kind of suck them in and transport them to this place where, you know, grief and sadness and loss and hope and all of that like still exist and are wrapped up in just what is an acceptable part of just being alive. And that's like I said before, it's like speaking to the human condition, making these areas that are kind of gray and pushed aside okay to reflect on and to digest. And you know, everything that we do, and probably all the songs that I write, it's to help with some sort of emotional release and help with an emotional understanding for people to be introspective, help them be introspective and help them explore these places in themselves that maybe are a little hard to get to or hard to face. And so I hope that this album even more so than the others, can help people sort of do that, or have a quiet, still moment where they can just, you know, detach from their bodies and be somewhere else. I recently, like, I guess, I don't know, in sharing a lot about myself, I've done ketamine therapy before. Okay. And there's a lot to like psychedelics, and I would say that like writing an album after having experiences like that, I was like, I want people to on psychedelics, because I think that's like a very important. And so I hope that this album can kind of give people that little bit of like out of body experience.
I know exactly what you're talking about. If more people knew about microdosing, we got to get it out there. Yeah. You know, we got to get it out there, Cammie, because it could the research for that helps people of all different types of mental illnesses or addictions or diseases or whatever is out there. But we're not going to get on that soapbox. Yeah. What I will tell you to help you to kind of like bring it back around is. Emotional is definitely a word that I think of when I listen to Oceans of Slumber, and I think that this one is definitely probably the most emotional album that y'all have written. And going in that Southern Gothic thing, like I heard it being described as that before I listened to the album. Then when I was listening to the album, I haven't spent a lot of time in, you know, Texas, Louisiana, or on that border or anything like that, but I have spent a lot of time in Kentucky and Tennessee, where I live now. And when I listened to this album, I just wanted to be on a back porch in the dusk with the tall grass and the fireflies with a glass of lemonade with some bourbon in it, and just kind of melts away to that place that you're talking about. That's what it does for me personally. I'm sure other people have their own things, but I think we're well on that way.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds a perfect listening experience.
It's great. Well, Cammie, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. Everybody, you can pick up Starlight and Ash now via Century Media Records, and you be safe out there. Have so much fun on tour, Cammie.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.